Hello lovely people and welcome to today's video. I am here to do the second part of my July wrap up and talking about the rest of the books that I finished during the later part of the month. I did end up concluding the month with 5 extra books. 2 of those were DNFs. I've also got a couple of extra things just to quickly talk about before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video. So I have just come off the back end of filming a little vlog where I was previewing a couple of samples. So these were books that I got in last year's Yauk that are extract samples of what were then new releases. As you might be able to see somewhere on the floor, maybe not, I do have a stack of those that it's the word procured, I got during my time there, and yeah, I read 4 of those. So if you want to check out that vlog and see which books I got and whether I was intrigued or unimpressed by the end of the samples, then definitely check out that vlog. Okay, let's get on to the bulk of this video. We are going to start with a non-fiction and it's Love by Jeanette Winterson. This is one of the vintage minis and this is very well described by a fellow reviewer over on Goodreads called Cacao. A snippet of their review says, Ms. Winterson's holding your hand, taking you around her house, pointing out objects she liked best and why she kept them. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's very akin to like in TV and media, the filler episodes that personally I typically like really want to skip, but then I'm like, there might be something extra in it that will be beneficial for the later season. This like was better. It was just that kind of vibe in essence. Winterson almost reviews her work prior and alongside the reader reflects on how she felt about that work in her headspace now and kind of, you know, recreates how she might have been feeling at the time that the piece was created, what was going on in the world as well as her internal world, and how that maybe differentiates or is still quite connected to how she's feeling at the point of writing this one. I personally hadn't read anything by her before, didn't realise that she wrote Frankenstein, which is one that has definitely been kind of on my radar just because of the title and the overall premise, but I have yet to read it. So I guess looking at it that way, it was beneficial because it did feel like an overview of, here is my stock, you might like this one, potentially you might enjoy this one. But at the same time, it kind of had the hindrance of, it did go into detail about stories and endings of stories that I had never read and I already now know the ending of, if that makes sense. It was just a bit of an intriguing one to come at with, you know, being a reader that hasn't read any of this author's works yet, kind of going into a book that overviews her selection and doesn't hold back on what happens when in each of the stories that she's talking about. I also think I would have had more of a deeper thought-provoking contribution had I had known her works a little bit better than I did. But overall, it was an interesting read, that's for sure. The next book I read was the graphic novel. This was previously on Webtoons and it has recently come to traditional print. This is Hungry Heart by Jem Milton. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. It is a queer rom-com that explores self-discovery, identity and acceptance. And in this story, we meet our 2 protagonists, Laurie, who is a freelance food blogger, and Orion, who is a superstar chef. I really loved all the elements of this, especially like the effortless diversity in here, such as disordered eating, mental health, vital pressures coming out, all felt well handled. But they weren't introduced in a way that eliminated the overall good cheer and warm feeling that the story had. I adored Laurie and Orion. I really recommend this if you haven't already picked it up. Next up, I listened to the following House of Night book. This was book 4, Untamed by PC and Kristen Cass. Zoe Redbird's adventures at the Vampire Finishing School take once again a dangerous turn as loyalties are tested and people's true intentions come to the light. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked that we got a bit more of a redemption arc from Zoe from actions that were taken in the previous book, you know, for like plot development reasons. It was nice that she got a chance to kind of rehabilitate herself in some ways and get to explain what she couldn't explain in previous books. This communication trope is one of my biggest pet peeves in any kind of entertainment. I really dislike that trope, and that was such a big thing, and it's probably going to be a big thing further still going throughout the rest of the series. But yeah, it was such a big thing, particularly in like the last book. So I'm glad that that got rectified in book 4, and we got to see characters kind of reconciliate and kind of get back on page and fight the good fight, you know. Particularly enjoyed learning some of the legends of the Troki people. I feel like I might have mispronounced that name, I do apologise. I do think though that it may be twisted and already used in kind of like an easy out for a villain storyline, which it doesn't sit too well with me, so I don't really know how that's gonna go down, especially from like a westernized gaze, if that makes sense. So I don't know how that's going to be handled come book 5, but already I can see the groundwork of that just being twisted in a way that possibly wasn't intended. Okay, and to finish up this video, I have 2 DNFs. Unfortunately, I decided to DNF these on the same day, but I really tried with one of them at least, and it just wasn't going anywhere. But before we get to that one, let's talk about Weather by Jenny Offal. So we are following Lizzie, who slid into her job as a librarian without any formal education on the matter. However, it does give her the opportunity to practice her true calling as a fake shrink. I ended up DNFing this at page 37. I just felt dizzy with how Lizzie's narration was constructed. Couldn't securely ground myself in the story. The style also reminded me of Ali Smith, who unfortunately, from what I've read so far, I've also struggled to absolutely love. Sorry, I know it's got a bit of a glare on it, but it's going down now. I unfortunately decided not to continue on with this one. And one that I think is going to be a bit controversial because everybody has loved it since its release. It is Lucy Rose's debut, The Lamb. This is a folktale, a horror, a love story and an enchantment, and we're following Margot, who lives in a very quaint cottage in the middle of the woods with her mum. Together they wait for strays to come knocking at their door to feast on their flesh. This one was a DNF at page 127. I think that was around chapter 35. So I did give it a good go, and I thought I could easily just kind of carry on reading it, but it wasn't giving me a strong enough emotion to really want to do that. Although initially making it more palatable, by this point being in Margot's head for the duration of time that we were in, I just felt kind of like dragged through. She felt quite dull as a character and felt like it was very aimless and lacked kind of motivation or the plot development. I did feel like nothing substantial was really happening at that point, and I mean, I bet you anything it probably all happens in the final like third of the story or something like that, but I am just not willing really to push through when it's been so quiet, which typically, you know, quiet books are fine, but I didn't really care for the characters either, so there wasn't really anything giving me that pull to carry on, which is such a shame because a lot of my buddies over on TikTok especially have been raving about this and really enjoying it, and I feel kind of disappointed that I wasn't able to enjoy it as much as they did. But yeah, decided to DNF this one. It just didn't give me the weird people energy that I was expecting it to give, despite it being about cannibalism. Anyway, those are the books that I wanted to wrap up the month with. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about here today, and I thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in another video soon. Bye.